All right, friends, it's T-Man. We are back. We're going to do a reaction video again to Jason Blaha. He just popped this beautiful video for us to react to. And, you know, the gym lifting, recruiting, lifting slave himself, Jason Blaha. Let's see what the gym slave has to say today. Blaha, the lifting slave, says, why strict reps are better for long-term muscle growth. Strict reps? Better for long-term muscle growth? I don't know any reps that are good for any kind of muscle growth, but okay.
It makes sense to try to use strict form as often as possible in your exercises.
Why? Why do you need strict form? Does a strict form build a muscle? Where does it say that in PubMed? A strict form magically builds muscles. Okay. Yeah, all right.
Thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this
today. I
missed
that one.
And when I make this
I guess I missed that one.
This is something I've started saying more and more in the last year. You know, as I've gained more experience as a coach, more experience as a lifter.
It's good to have good form so you don't, you know, I don't know, injure yourself depending on what kind of weight you're lifting.
Over 25 years in the game. And I want to be clear, this is not a position that I held 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I was putting out content. So when I
Really? You haven't? What happened?
This discussion, this is not just saying, hey, there's been a kind of a change in stance here and a change in maturity on my part, my approach to...
A change in maturity, a change in his stance. Wow, that's incredible.
Training and the information I put out, it's saying, you know, I didn't have...
So you mean the training information you put out was all wrong? And now you're correcting it? All those poor people that have sacrificed, those poor lambs that have sacrificed themselves to the Jason Blaha Ice Cream Fitness.
Fully right before. And there are times when we have to step up and say, look, maybe I wasn't right. You know, maybe as I've gained more...
You weren't right. You know how many people you hurt? Come on.
More information and more maturity, I've come to realize that there were flaws in my previous position, and so we then have an obligation to adjust those positions.
Why do humans have flaws in their information or whatever they're doing? Because they don't know anything. Get it?
For the people who follow us, and I think that is the ethical and mature approach to take with this sort of thing. Now, I have previously said, look, there's a case to be made for controlled cheating. Okay, what was my general argument? Heavier eccentric overloads, right? Because if we cheat on a weight a little bit, have to use a little bit of body English, you know, a cheat curl, a cheat row, you know, a push press, whatever it is we happen to be doing.
A cheat row, okay, cheating. Why are you cheating for? What's the point of cheating? I have a question for everybody. What does cheating do? Let's say you do a cheat row or whatever. What will that do? Why do you lift heavier? What is the reason that you lift heavier? Why do people lift heavier if they're trying to get an adaptation in muscle damage? But people that are adapted, why are they lifting heavier? Why are either one lifting heavier? What's the reason? A person that's shooting for muscle damage and adaptation, why are they trying to lift heavier? And a person that's adapted, why are they trying to lift heavier? See? Why are they trying to lift heavier? What's the purpose behind lifting heavier? Does a lifting heavier get you a bigger? So if you get a stronger, lifting a heavier, do you get a bigger? Do you get bigger? How do you get bigger from lifting heavier?
All right, we're lifting a heavier weight than we can really lift with the muscles we want to target on the concentric, the way up, but then on the way down, we're getting an eccentric overload. Okay, we're getting an eccentric.
Ah, you're getting an eccentric overload, man. He's been watching my videos. Eccentric overload. Yeah, dude.
Overload. Okay, and I can remember everyone always says eccentric reps are really important for gaining muscle.
No, eccentric reps aren't. Oh, man. Eccentric reps aren't essential for gaining muscle. They're essential for getting an adaptation in muscle damage. You understand me? Eccentrics are associated with muscle damage. Concentric is not associated with muscle damage. It's more associated with force production. That's about it, really. Makes you better at lifting weights. It's the opposite of the downforce. It's the opposite force. So it's associated with, you could say it's associated with muscle damage, which therefore can be associated with growth, providing protein synthesis exceeds this breakdown. Providing you're in a positive nitrogen balance, you're anabolic, eating, building muscles, yes. But that would be called an adaptation. Now, what do you get when you're adapted lifting a heavy weight? You're adapted now. Let's say you're adapted to the eccentric exercise and the concentric. What are you getting there? Why are you lifting heavier? Why are you lifting heavier even in an adapted state? Because you're trying to get what? An adaptation. And what is an adaptation associated with? Again, muscle damage. Get it, bro?
And again, there's something to be said for eccentric reps for things like stretch-mediated hypertrophy to some extent. So all of that being
Stretch-mediated hypertrophy? No such thing. I don't know. There's stretching. You can stretch. There's a stretch there, yes.
said, does it really make a lot of sense to do that? Right? Does it really make a lot of
If you're shooting for an adaptation, it does.
sense in the grand scheme of things? And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. And here's why. Because at the end of the day, it's all still about putting tension on the muscle.
Then guess what? You won't be able to further that myonuclear domain. If you don't, you can't further that myonuclear domain. It will not donate its nuclei to an adapted muscle fiber. You need to get an adaptation in order for the satellite cell to donate its nuclei so it can support what? Further muscle growth. Yeah.
And the concentric is just as important. No one's ever going to convince me that the eccentric is more important. Can eccentric loading...
No, concentric is important, but eccentric is the most important. Without that, you can't get an adaptation.
itself produce slightly different types of hypertrophy and hypertrophy stimulus, you bet. So is it probably important, if your goal is to maximize hypertrophy, we obviously should.
No, it's associated with strength too, man. Look it up in PubMed. Just type up eccentric, exercise, whatever. It's going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff there.
Have a concentric and an eccentric rep. Okay? If our goal is to maximize hypertrophy, that's muscle tissue growth, right?
Yeah.
Growth stimulus in the actual contractile proteins of the muscle. All right. So I don't want to discount eccentrics either, but I also don't want people to stand there and say, well, eccentric is more important than the concentric. I don't know that the evidence...
He doesn't want a what? Eccentric? Discount? Man.
that
Whatever.
would confirm that. Is it important? Yes, but so is the concentric.
It is very important. The eccentric is more important than the, really, I'm going to tell you the truth. Eccentric is more important than concentric, okay? It's superior in every way to concentric, because concentric will never equate to any growth, to any muscle damage, so you can get muscle growth. There isn't anything there to repair because there's no damage, there's no growth, there's no adaptations in concentric. It only happens in the eccentric form, okay? Rep or whatever you want to call it.
Now, that being said, muscle fibers are stimulated by putting tension on them. It's by putting tension on, not just on the muscle.
They're stimulated by putting tension on them. Now, a muscle cell can get disrupted with tension. Yeah, okay. What about it?
But on the individual fiber. In other words, for a muscle fiber to grow, and there's thousands or millions of them just in your biceps alone.
Yeah.
For a muscle fiber to grow, it has to contract. It has to be stimulated. Now, there's an argument.
I would agree. It has to be stimulated so it can open what? A window for protein synthesis. So the window for protein synthesis is going to be much larger than the window for protein breakdown. So now you have a chance to build muscles. Now, if protein synthesis in your diet does not exceed that breakdown, within that first, I would say the first 30 minutes to 1 hour, if you don't eat right away, forget it. It starts shutting down right away. And you have a very short window in that time. It usually lasts about 4 hours. I would say that first 4 hours of eating, protein synthesis exceeds that breakdown, that's when you're going to see maximal growth. Now, they're going to say in science that it's going to last 24 hours, maybe even 36 hours, and then shut off or whatever. I'm not disputing that there may be something there lasting for a while, but it will become blunted after 2 hours if you don't eat. That could be even worse. So you have to eat right away and for at least a good 4 hours the first session.
Meant for things like stress-mediated hypertrophy. I understand that. We're going with the conventional data that we have. Because keep in mind that also with things like sarcomere links actually has very limited short-lived growth. It's not something you can keep doing indefinitely if we go off the data. But contracting muscle fibers, getting them to fully contract and then fatigue, that does seem to work indefinitely.
I don't know. Fatigue. That's what runners get. They get fatigued when they run down the street.
That does seem to work indefinitely. Okay? That is something you can continue to do for years, decades even, and continue to see muscle gains even if they're going to be diminished. So that really is.
Yeah, you can see phony gains, sarcoplasmic gains if you're trained. If you don't know what you're doing and you're eating carbohydrates, you're getting sarcoplasmic muscles, dude.
This is kind of the point. We need to be contracting the muscle fibers that we want to grow. So not just the muscle.
So you need to contract the muscle fibers if you want to grow. Well, you gotta stimulate them. You gotta disrupt the muscle cell. There's a disruption, lifting, and then you go eat some protein synthesis, right? Because there's a window now for protein synthesis. There's an open window. See what I mean?
But here's the thing to look at something like a cheat curl. All right, here's the way we would look at a cheat curl. If we want the biceps to grow, the individual fibers in a bicep, we should probably be using the bicep to do the exercise. Pretty straightforward. Are we still using it if we cheat on the concentric? Sure. But how much? In other words, are we failing eccentrically when we reach failure? Because if we're having to cheat, we may not be getting an optimal concentric load. We could argue, yes, the bicep is doing part of it, but we don't know how much. I mean, realistically, and you're probably seeing failure on the eccentrics. That's what
I don't know. What if you do three repetitions for each body part? Is there a window for protein synthesis? How big is that window? How many sets do you need to open a window for protein synthesis, for the muscle to open a window? Can you do one set and then there's a window open right away? Let's say you do one hard set for your biceps. Is there now a window for protein synthesis? Will that muscle grow? See what I mean? How many sets to grow? I'm not talking about muscle damage. I'm talking about how many sets for a muscle to open a window for protein synthesis so then you can go and eat and grow that muscle. See what I mean?
the muscle failure is happening. Now, if you're going to argue that the eccentric is better, then it makes sense, but I don't know that the evidence is really there for that. So it almost feels like if you're going to do cheat exercises, you're shortchanging the concentric rep to get a stronger eccentric. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't know that that's the best way to gain muscle. I actually at this
I don't know that.
point in time do not believe that it is. I'm not saying you can't cheat a little every now and then on it, by the way. I'm simply saying that as a general rule for most of your training, it should try to be reasonably strict. It doesn't have to necessarily be slow, but it should be reasonably strict. And in so doing, we are generally going to ensure that we reach concentric muscle failure. Okay? Because that's usually what we're trying to do. Because
Concentric muscle failure? Not eccentric? Okay.
if you're getting real close to concentric failure, you can slow the last eccentric down a lot on the last rep. If you know, man, I know I can't do another rep after this one. I know I'm not going to be able to. If you just lower that eccentric slower than normal, that'll reach eccentric failure, and then you won't be able to do the concentric failure at all.
Really? And then what? What happens when you go to failure? Why do you need to fail at lifting these weights? Why do you got to fail at doing them? What is the purpose? Look, at lifting weights opens a window for protein synthesis, right? That is the whole thing. Okay, you lift some weights, you open the window for protein synthesis. Let's say you didn't get any muscle damage. You lifted the weight and there's a window for protein synthesis now. Okay, you're adapted, you're lifting, whatever. You're just a gym lifting slave, whatever, a lifting slave. And you open the window. What now? What happens? Why go to failure? Why do drop sets? What's the purpose? What's behind drop sets? What will they do? Will they open a bigger window for protein synthesis? Is that it? Or if I go to failure, will the window be even bigger or something? Will it widen even more or something? What's it got, some special magic powers? What's the difference between me doing 1 set, 2 sets, 3 sets, or me going to failure? Will that protein synthesis, that window, what will it do? Will it last longer? Will it stay? Will it get bigger? Will it able to suck in more protein or something? What's it gonna do? Convert the little amount of bagels and pasta and rice and garbage food you're eating, the garbage food you put in the garbage compactor in your stomach? Is that gonna like somehow take that garbage food and create muscle out of it? Like, what's it gonna do exactly there, man? What if you don't eat enough protein synthesis to exceed that breakdown and you've done all that? What will happen exactly?
And so we're going to be able to do it that way, and that's done better with control. All right, the other thing, if
You think people on the internet are not watching my videos? They caught on to me already a long time ago, bro. They knew my old channel. They know my new channel, especially now after the lifting slave campaign.
we are doing cheat reps, we also are going to have a higher risk of injury, okay? And we have to accept that. We have to accept that. If we're going to cheat on exercise, you're going to do a cheat curl. You're going to do a really heavy cheat lateral. I don't ever see people get hurt on a cheat lateral. We've all seen people get hurt on a cheat curl. We've seen people hurt their backs on cheat rows. I used to be big on cheat rows.
He used to be big on cheat rows, all right.
Have an even better back now that I focus on stricter rowing and pull-ups. I feel like my lats are probably bigger. Now, that's not evidence, of course, because my lats are probably going to get bigger as many years as I continue to train on more, and I've been training on.
They're going to get bigger the more years he trains on them. He's getting older. They're not getting bigger. You're shrinking, Blaha. As you get older, you start shrinking. You're shrinking. You don't get bigger lats. They don't get bigger.
Okay, fair enough. But in that case, I feel like they're better. I feel like my biceps are better now that I've gone stricter. But here's the other thing.
The more you lift in a caloric deficit, what you call caloric deficit, the more you're going to lose muscle mass because you're aging. You're deteriorating faster than you're even aging right now. That's for sure. You're losing muscle, bro. You're just wasting your time.
My tendons don't always hurt as much. I feel better. And this is kind of a big deal. All those cheat reps.
His tendons don't hurt as much? That's a good thing? It shouldn't be hurting at all whatsoever. What are you talking about? There's something wrong here.
Beat you up. They're harder on recovery. They beat your tendons up.
Then why do you want to destroy yourself, your muscle in your body in the gym, lifting, and then you need to recover from all this lifting? I thought the whole basis of lifting was to open a window for protein synthesis. So now you have to exceed that breakdown. You got to go and eat a load of protein. So then you can build that myofibrillar, put some mass on that myofibrillar, get it? So you can get stronger. Isn't that the goal? I always thought that was the goal.
Okay? You go do heavy cheat curls. You guys saw me doing right there, just 75-pound strict curls. I used to do cheat curls with 185 pounds.
Yeah, but why are you doing cheat curls? What is the purpose behind it? Do you want to get better at doing cheat curls? Or do you want to open a window for protein synthesis? Which one is it? You got to make up your mind. You can't have your cake and eat it too, Blaha.
With probably a little bit smaller biceps than I have now. You know what? I used to sometimes
Probably smaller biceps. Your biceps are smaller than they've ever been. They're so tiny.
feel at my elbows and tendons more. Is that then increasing the risk of injury? Yes, those tendons get inflamed. You're going to reach overuse. Because what causes us to get hurt? Overuse. Overuse is the number one cause.
Overuse is the number one cause of getting injury. Then why are you overusing? Does overusing open a bigger window for protein synthesis? What is the purpose? What's going on here, man? What kind of training is this?
Injuries in the weight room, at least if we go off the research and data we have, not saying it's fully conclusive, it definitely biases in that direction.
What?
Overuse. Well, if we're cheating more, And those tendons are getting more inflamed because they're having to handle much heavier weights than they would normally
I just don't get it.
be able to do for a strict rep. We're increasing our risk of overuse. We're increasing our risk of getting hurt. It's just safer, and you're probably going to get slightly better gains from just training strict.
What? That made absolutely no sense. You're going to get better gains? How? How does it give you better gains? How does it give you better gains? There are no gains, man. I don't know what he's talking about.